Hi traders and welcome to Pepperstone's technical analysis wrap on Friday the 7th of August. So I've seen some good moves early in the week and some good consolidation towards the end of the week here. We've got some key levels on the majors that are being respected and a little bit of anticipation for the non-farm payroll results tonight. So we'll jump straight in and see if we can identify any potential trade setups before then. So we'll start out with the Aussie USD. On a weekly chart here at the start, we can see that the last week's action pushed it up to the previous support and resistance level at around that 72.5 cents. It rejected off that towards the end of the week, but this week has been a really strong week. When we go to a daily, you can see we've had a very strong build up into this week, and it's really starting to test this level again. Now, we've got to be mindful that it is non-farm payroll tonight, so it would be hard to imagine that this would be breaking this level before any non-farm payroll results came out. So we could probably see price meandering around this level, maybe just floating up and down, only a handful of pips. This is probably going to be the scene for a lot of the majors prior to the news tonight, so this is no exception. We can go to the 4 hour and you can see you've had some good price action in between here, so there's been opportunities to actually get into these two levels. This was the previous level down at the 70.28, so you can see that it's respected that zone there, broken through, and we've got a series of higher highs and higher lows to be able to trade in. When we go to the smaller time frames, you can see here that basically all of these were scalping opportunities, but this level is proving to be a handful for it, as we would expect. We always thought it was going to find trouble every 50 or so pips, so no real surprises there. It's probably going to be pretty small ranges for the next 12 to 14 hours or so probably just keep an eye on this one more than anything else. If it starts to sell off from this level, maybe you can get involved in a scalp, but it wouldn't surprise me to see it being right around this level in about 12 to 14 hours from now, so just one to keep an eye on. We'll move on now to the US dollar CAD. This one is a bit of an interesting one because there's a couple of things that have happened most recently that it's really saw this break this very, very key support zone here. You can see that it broke it down, but what has happened since, this is a daily chart, it's actually very rare that we get a candle pattern like this, and I'll blow it up a little bit. This is actually a bullish harami, which is a very, very rare candle pattern, especially on a time frame and especially in currency. So that is an interesting pattern because it usually signals a reversal, and a pretty strong reversal at that. So given that it's actually broken the support, it's already got a little bit of work to do just to get above it. But, the fact that that candle formation has formed definitely needs us to give some respect to this level. You can see that we've got the divergence we were talking about last week is still there, as we would expect. The stochastic has also got divergence. You can see the lows. I'll draw them up so you can actually see what I'm talking about. Okay, so we can see that divergence there. So we've got double divergence on that at a very key level. It did break down that support level, no question about that, but it has formed a bullish candle pattern that, although under support, still needs to be respected. Now, what it's doing on the smaller time frames is probably going to be the key here. We can see that obviously it's trying to make a new series of higher highs and higher lows. It's still got a little bit of work to do to get past this, but a 4 hour candle close above this level would give us the higher high and higher low sequence that we're looking for a change of trend, which is obviously very important when it's at a serious level of support. The upside to this is quite good, and this is why I do like this trade. If we do get our sequence of higher highs and higher lows, it opens it right up until sort of that one, the initial target. I'll take it out to a daily to actually show you. The initial target for this one is probably around the 135, so I'll put a horizontal line there. So this is actually the target that you're potentially going for if we get that change of trend that we're looking for. So there's certainly plenty of room to move. So what you want to be doing with this one, waiting for that small time frame change of trend. The 1 hour is just as important. I do like what it's doing here. The 1 hour's got above the 20 moving average, starting to respect it. MACD's crossed to the upside. And you can see the signal lines out of the MACD histogram on the 4 hour as well, which is generally a positive sign. One to watch. Still, this is probably not going to do anything too exciting before non-farm, but definitely set an alert for this level here. If we get a 4 hour break above the that support zone around the 133.34 area, there's about 180 pips to the next real resistance, which is on the daily. So up there, so pretty good risk reward trade. One definitely to keep an eye on at a very key level. And so we'll take a look at the dollar index now. It's steadied up over the last little bit. You can see this has been a big indecision candle on the daily now after the pretty solid selling this week. when we go to the 4 hour, we can really see that playing out. You can see that there's a lot of indecision here, a lot of candles that are really telling us not a hell of a lot, but it could be potentially showing us that the momentum to the downside has been pulled up by the buyers. So, and that's pretty significant given where the CAD and the USD yen are as well. So certainly one to just basically keep an eye on. What we want to see here is obviously that break above the 20. We need a solid candle break. We haven't had that for quite a while. We need to see that happen before we start getting excited about potentially trading this dollar index or any of the dollar-based pairs around it. But the indecision, not that I guess unusual for a non-farm payroll week, and I wouldn't imagine that this is going to change a hell of a lot again before non-farm payroll tonight. So it's probably going to be a fairly low volume, not much of a move day on a lot of these pairs that we're going to talk about, but certainly worth setting alerts for, because once that announcement and results do come out, it does set up the remaining trading day in the US and also next week. So set your alerts, and if we do get a break above this sometime throughout the New York session, it bodes pretty well for next week's trading. We'll move on to the EURUSD now. That's continued with its power all the way up. You can see that it's basically, it pulled back a little bit last 4 or 5 daily candles, but the last 4 days have been very, very strong. Pushed right up to the previous highs again at around that sort of just a tick over 119. Again, it's hard to imagine this is going to move a hell of a lot today, but it's at that point, which is quite often, they do gravitate to the really key important zones before a big news announcement like non-farms. So it was no surprise to see it reject off this level, and you did have that nice candle there that actually really helped push it up. I'll blow that up a little bit. It's the scalping opportunities on this one that you'd be looking for, really. You can probably take it down to a 1 hour. Still a little bit messy. Those last few periods have been fairly messy, but you're trading a pretty tight range here. I would be thinking that it's probably going to hover between probably that 118.80 to maybe 119.10 for the next 12 hours or so. So if you're going to the really small time frames and potentially get a couple of opportunities to trade into that range, there's still some scalps to be had. Just be mindful that the market's going to be a little bit slow, but if you're going for those 15-20 pip scalps, there are a couple of opportunities there. But just be very careful around the sort of 10 p.m. time, close to non-farm payroll tonight, Melbourne time, to make sure that your stops are quite tight, and be aware that the market will start to move at that point. But until then, there are definitely some scalps that you can get just trading up to the highs at around that sort of 119, and probably the lows at around the 118.70. So we'll move on to the pound USD now. I guess no real surprises here to see that it's at a very strong point of resistance. No surprise at all, given that where we're at. Now, the interesting one about this one is that I think it's probably more interesting in another pair that we're going to look at, or a cross pair. You can see that it's obviously at really strong resistance. We'll go down to the smaller time frames. Again, you had those opportunities to trade it in the smaller time frames up into this level. But I think the real test for this one will be, what happens tonight. If it can break this level, we need to go out to a weekly to see where it could potentially go. But, realistically, there's nothing stopping it. If we get a close above this particular level at around that 132 on a daily chart, probably this is the weekly that we're looking at, but if we get a close above that on a daily chart, it definitely opens it up to getting into those sort of 133.80s to 134 levels, which is a pretty reasonable move. Now, that can definitely happen. You can see the weekly is looking pretty strong. The MACD is rising and gone above the 0 now. We're about to get a 20-50 moving average cross on a weekly, which is a very significant time frame. So when you factor all this in, it does bode fairly well for the smaller time frames on it. But indeed, we need to see a daily close above this level. Okay, so we need to see a daily close at least above 132. And if that happens, it sets us up next week for potential moves, long into that new resistance zone at around the 134. So definitely one to keep an eye on, and probably just scalp again for the remainder of the day if any opportunities present. Now I'm going to have a look at the pound Oz today. So this is one that I'm going to have a look at because it's actually significant given that what we were looking at on the USD pound and the Aussie USD. You can see here that we had a really nice hammer candle. I was talking about this during the week. It had a big explosive move up. Now, what this is really interesting because we were looking at this yesterday, and this was almost going to set up as a morning star pattern, because yesterday when we were looking at it, this candle was actually a full green candle and looking like a complete morning star, which would have boded very well for the longer term move on this pair. Now, what it's done, obviously, and this is why we wait for confirmation, that candle completely reversed, and now it looks nothing like the morning star that it was going to be. But it has found itself at a pretty significant point at a role reversal zone. So I'll draw the line there that I'm talking about. You can see here that it was support there, it was resistance there, and it could potentially find support here again. Now MACD is rising, okay, it's gone into above the zero zone again. Now how this one's going to play out is really predominantly on which pair is going to be stronger, whether it's going to be the pound USD or the Aussie USD. So if the pound USD is stronger than the Aussie USD, this is going to react off this level and go long. So we know both of them. We'll just click back through both of them. This is the pound USD here. You can see that it's obviously at a very strong point of resistance. And if it does break here, it looks really strong to the upside. Whereas on the Aussie, when we go to a weekly on the Aussie, you can see that it's got resistance everywhere you look. As soon as it breaks this level here, it's got resistance at every 30 or 40 pips. Okay, every one of these zones here is going to cause it trouble. So when you look at it compared to the pound, once it gets through this level here, this has got probably an easier time of moving up. So that actually does say to us on the pound Aussie that if the pound USD is stronger than the Aussie USD, you would think that this one could definitely reverse off this level and start to push higher. And what I do like about this trade is if it does do this, and basically what it needs to do now is a change of trend on a smaller time frame and make a new high. And if it does get that new high above the 184, it has got a lot of blue sky in front of it. Okay, the next point is 186. That's the next serious point of resistance. And after that, you're going all the way up into the 190. So a lot of clear air in front of us if this one happens to play the game. The pound USD has less traffic in front of it than the Aussie USD, and that bodes really, really well for this particular trade. All right, so the last one we'll look at today is the ASX, or we'll go the US 500 actually is the one we'll look at today. So obviously it's pushing to new recent highs. We can see that. We can go out to a daily to see the significance of this zone. Okay, it's pushing up probably, look, 33.88 is the highs that we've got around here, sort of at 33.91. It's really trying to get to that level. Whether it gets there or not before non-farm payroll is going to be debatable, and whether non-farm payrolls pushes it up there or not, again, is going to depend on the results. Can't imagine this is going to do very much throughout the day. It may meander on up there. It's been pretty strong, but it's going to be very difficult to see it get past this level before non-farm. So potentially, I think it's going to be fairly sideways like a lot of the majors, like I've said today. So probably if you are going to trade this one throughout the day, it's more a scalping opportunity. Look at the smaller time frames down to the 15-minute, maybe trade into these zones. So it might short off into the sort of 33, 35 area, maybe play that 10 or 15 pip move. So it's probably got a range of around 30 or 40 points for the majority of the day, I would have thought. So maybe trade those zones, and I can't imagine anything more exciting than that is going to happen. So if you really, really want to trade this one, potentially look for shorting opportunities to around the 33, 35, and then maybe thinking about longing it again into the same area that it's at now. And just be mindful again that it is non-farms tonight, so don't expect really big moves before probably 10 p.m. our time in Melbourne. Okay, so I hope everybody's had a great week's trading. We've had some pretty good moves. We've got consolidation now, so just trade very carefully for the rest of today and obviously over the weekend if you're holding positions, because we can get some blowout moves if the numbers go one way or the other. So we've got some good opportunities for next week, so keep an eye on those support and resistance levels that we talked about, and hopefully we'll get some good trending moves at the start of next week. I apologize for the rough voice that I've got, but I've lost my voice this week, so I've done the best that I can. So hopefully you can understand me correctly. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.